Without their support and contributions, we can't do nearly as much as we are able to do. So as ever, we're really grateful to them for their continued support. However, to our session today, I'm obviously delighted to welcome Mark Anderson. Mark is the Managing Director of Property and International and a member of the Executive Committee at Whitbread Plc, who are a FTSE 100 listed company on the UK Stock Exchange. He has responsibility for acquiring and developing real estate for the group, and is also managing Whitbread's extensive property asset base, which in 2019 was valued at around £5 billion. In addition, he runs the mergers and acquisitions for the group, manages the development of operations in their new Premier Inn business in Germany, and sits on the board of their Middle East joint venture business as well. He's managed a number of strategic transactions at Whitbread, including hotel company acquisitions in the UK and in Germany, and has also overseen the addition of over 50,000 new bedrooms to the Premier Inn development pipeline. He's a fellow of the RICS and of the Chartered Management Institute. He's a member of the Association for Project Management and holds an MBA from Henley Business School. However, he admitted to me that his crowning achievement was when he received the CoreNet UK's Corporate Real Estate Executive of the Year Award in 2013. So, Mark, thank you so much for joining us, and welcome.
James, thanks. It's great to see you again. Great to be here back in the folds of CoreNet. It's been a while since I've been in one of your forums or at one of your dinners, so it's great to be back with you. I'm joining you this morning from Hampshire. I'm at my home, obviously, like most people, and it's great to be able to see a number of people virtually and to be able to take part in this chat today and hopefully give you a little bit of an insight into my career and some of the decisions I've taken along the way to help my business and to help me personally.
Brilliant. Look, that's so kind. In terms of your role and your day to day, can you give us a bit of a sort of an overview of what that entails and what that involves at Whitbread?
Yeah, I mean, you've explained my key kind of accountabilities, I guess. I have really two parts to my role on the ExCo. The first is real estate, and that's fairly obvious. We've got a large business. Predominantly in the UK, we own about 800 hotels in the UK and about 400 pubs and restaurants. And then overseas in Germany, we've got a new business. We've got 52 hotels in development in Germany, and we've got a business in the Middle East. Again, a hotel business in the Middle East, branded Premier Inn, as it happens in the Middle East. My role is to look after the development of all of the real estate across the world. We're in 10 countries in total. Acquiring the property, overseeing the construction, and then the management of it, and also recycling capital by sale and leaseback or disposals or some sort of refinancing opportunities to invest in high returning new growth in new markets as we go forward. And then the second part of my role is to develop our overseas operations. I look after the P&L as well as the balance sheet and the development overseas in those two territories of Western Europe and the Middle East. So I've got a team in Frankfurt and I've got a team in Dubai, and that's the other half. And that's where the M&A comes in, where we've been acquiring other hotel companies and rebranding them into Premier Inn just to accelerate our growth. So I find myself, I'm in a team of probably 8 of us directors. I've got a few hundred people in my team, both in the UK and overseas. And I spend most of my time flitting between the UK and Germany with the occasional trips to Dubai to join board meetings or management meetings over there. But it's very much one of driving day-to-day operations and then input into strategy and presentations to our PLC board on a frequent basis every few months.
Wow. So, I mean, you're a similar age to me, so I know like how long you've been at this. But could you perhaps describe to us how you got to where you were in terms of where you started from and where and when?
Yeah, I mean, my career journey through probably real estate predominantly has now been over 30 years, and it's quite unconventional compared to a lot of the people I talk to now, and a lot of junior and middle managers who I coach, and there are some in my organisation, and there are some people outside Whitbread that I talk to and I mentor on a regular basis. I was born in the north of England, near Manchester. My father was in finance. He was a Manchester City Council Treasury, and then went into consultancy at Deloitte and worked through kind of audit and back office. And probably one of the most unpopular jobs he did was head of council tax and business rates, which is probably in the top 3 that people like to poke fun at. So we've always had a bit of real estate in the house, but not extensively at all. I did my A-levels and I was in a hurry to get a job. Both of my brothers went on to university at 18 years old. I didn't. I wanted to get on with a career, and I wanted to get stuck in, and I wanted to cut my teeth doing something, and felt like I needed to move on. And my parents were very supportive. I wasn't massively studious as a teenager. I was very interested in a wide range of things, and in people particularly, and I went out into work. And I started in Manchester with the Co-op, who are a big employer in Manchester, lots of different facets to their organisation. In retail, in investment, in insurance, and all sorts of things. And I did a short while there, and then I came to London to join Sainsbury's after a few years through their trainee management program, effectively. And I got a job initially at the head office as a executive assistant to the property director, who was then a PLC director, a guy called Ian Cool, who very sadly passed away 3 or 4 years ago, who went on to become CEO of Segro. And Ian was my mentor, and it was under his stewardship and in his organisation that I really started to build my career in property for Sainsbury's, the supermarket business. And it was about developing new supermarkets. It was about the distribution network, the logistics side, and the office network. And I started in a junior management role looking after project management, so overseeing some minor refurbishment works at stores, rolling out lottery machines. That's how long ago it was. That was one of the things that passed through my desk early on. And then gradually built up into more meaningful capital investment programs at individual stores. So maybe a store extension, or an addition, or a rebrand, or a refurbishment. And that was really where I spent a few years in project management. And I'd done other things around that in Sainsbury's. I'd done a bit of time on some audit work. I'd done some cultural change programs that were kind of project management, program management. And I'd taken a little bit from each of those and applied them in the program management that I then did with the capital investment programs. And I did that for a few years, James, and that was great. And I really enjoyed it. The supermarkets were going through dramatic growth in the 1990s. It was a bit of a race with Asda and Tesco and Sainsbury's. They were all rapidly growing out of centre, out in the regions. And we were going through a real boom time. And we had a team there of 400 people in property in Sainsbury's. So just shows how big it was. And when I look at my organisation in Whitbread now and the scale of what we're doing, and I compare it to Sainsbury's a lot, and remarkable we had so many people in-house. And maybe that's something we could talk about. But then I went on from the construction side to take on more asset management, and I was given a great opportunity by a former boss who allowed me to broaden my role within the organisation through an inevitable restructure. And that's where I took over the asset management, so the landlord and tenant, the rent reviews, the disposals. And it wasn't an area I was expert in, but I had some really great people in that team who were experts and who'd done it for years. And we were able to combine that with the other functions and make it a really efficient way of managing the existing estate for Sainsbury's. So I took a bit of a turn at that point, and then I carried on working in similar roles, managing their existing real estate, looking after disposals. I did some sale and leasebacks for the first time and led those for Sainsbury's. Again, that would be around the 2000 point. And then I left there in 2005, and that's when I joined Whitbread. And that's where I took, I suspect, the most pivotal, that was the most pivotal point in my career, where I moved from pure retailer with some distribution attached to it to a very different conglomerate organisation within Whitbread. And frankly, a different role, different culture, different business at a different stage in its maturity.
So with that, with the move from Sainsbury's to Whitbread, what precipitated that move? And was there anything that from your sort of previous experiences and roles at Sainsbury's that grounded and prepared you for what was the challenges that you were likely to face at Whitbread?
Yeah, I mean, so what prompted me to leave? To be honest, I probably overstayed my welcome at Sainsbury's by a number of years, and I'd been through the business corporate cycle so many times in the organisation that I did feel like I needed to freshen up and do something else. And a new CEO came in again. It was Justin King, a new plan, new approach, more cost cutting, more efficiency drive. We were starting to see some consolidation. We were starting to slow development. Real estate was still important because they still own a lot of property in their supermarket business. But the development side was becoming less pronounced, less important in the strategy. And I was becoming keenly aware that I'd worked for two companies, James, but most of my real estate experience was in one company in one sector. And I realized that as I went on and projected myself forward 20, 30 years, if I carried on doing what I was doing, I wouldn't have the breadth that I needed. And I was very keen to join an organization that operated in different sectors, ideally in the UK, because that's where I was comfortable. That's where I knew most about the real estate market and my network was strongest. But I was quite keen to get something that had some international dimension too. And as it happens, I was actually going to join a bank. I'd resigned to join a bank. I was going to join HSBC and look after their real estate across Europe. And one of the people that I had as a reference was a board director at Whitbread, who'd been my boss about 5 years before. And when HSBC took up the reference with him, that started a conversation. And he said, look, I think you'd be really good here. I've got some great plans, how I want to change the business here. We're about to go through some change. Why don't you come and do something in leisure? And we had Costa Coffee at the time, and we had some other businesses. So there was a mix of retail and leisure, very UK dominant, leased, freehold. So some commonality, but some real stretch for me with international, with leisure, and with a broader portfolio of brands to look after. That was the attraction.
And so what were the immediate challenges then that you faced? Because Whitbread today, the most people are obviously familiar with with Premier Inn and a couple of your other brands, but there were quite a few more back in the noughties, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, when I joined, I think we had 10 businesses. And the organisation was very different. It was a conglomerate. We had a group structure at the top with the chairman, CEO, and a few corporate areas, and that's where I was, group property. We had treasury and tax and everything, the usual things. But then each company had its own executive committee. So we had David Lloyd Leisure, big business of racket clubs. We had TGI Fridays, Pizza Hut, Marriott UK franchise, Costa, Premier Inn, etc. So we had, 10 big businesses, and they all had their own managing director. They had their own FD, property director, etc. And my job was formed by taking out roles from each of those 10 companies and bringing them together into some central roles. And so it was quite a tough landing because I had to go into 10 executive committees every month and lay out a property strategy. They'd lost their property director who was sat in the business, and they weren't all pleased about that. They quite liked the person that worked in the team, and they'd been made redundant. So there was some hostile reception. There was also a lot of conflict between the businesses. I mean, at one stage, we found out that the restaurant business was bidding against Premier Inn for a site on the edge of one of the towns in the UK. They were operating so much in silos. So it was quite a tough landing, and leisure wasn't something I was well versed in. The hotel real estate market at the time they operated on turnover leases. They were non-institutional, most of the leases. The rents went up, down, backwards, sideways, and all over the place. It really was still an emerging asset class. And then we had this huge restaurant business that was all freehold, that we could see was likely to be a declining business over time. And when I joined, we went through at the same time a big strategy review with the new chief executive. Alan Parker was the chap at the time who'd just taken over. And Alan said, look, I want to consolidate this business. I want to get out of all the businesses where we have a franchise because we don't agree with the owners on the direction. I want to keep the businesses where we can expand them rapidly in the UK and that have overseas growth potential. And so we went through a process around 2005, 6, 7, 8 of disposing of businesses. And again, I had done a little bit of acquiring businesses. I hadn't done disposing of businesses. And I was on a team of 3 who had to do that. So we sold David Lloyd Leisure, for almost £1 billion. We sold TGI Fridays, which was messy because it was a franchise business. We sold Pizza Hut. So that was all new to me and quite traumatic. At the same time, I was trying to establish myself in a new firm, build a team around me and replace the team that I'd had, and learn about real estate in Holland, where we had leisure clubs, or in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, where we had hotels starting to open, or in Asia, where we had Costa coffee shops. So massive change to my role, and some of which I was well prepared for, some of which I had to pick up in the first few years.
Was this more or less at the time of the sort of the 2008 sort of credit crunch? Did that have a big impact on the shape of the and your role for the next sort of 10 years?
It did. It had a huge impact because we got David Lloyd away just before Lehman Brothers actually went into administration. It was literally just before, and that left us with a pretty clear business around Costa Coffee and around a Premier Inn and restaurant business that we ran as a combined unit. And we wanted to grow those rapidly. And suddenly the credit crunch meant we stopped growing as quickly. We cut back all our development. I think at the time in our land acquisition team, I had something like 20 people and we took that down to 5. We had a big construction team, which we had to reduce rapidly in response to some difficult circumstances. And hotels are very cyclical, so you tend to find when the economy slows, 6 months later, the hotels all slow down. There's less people staying for conferences or training or business purposes. So it hit us really hard. And in fact, the share price, I think, dropped by about 80%. And we kind of went along the bottom for a while until the market came back. And as it came back rapidly. And so we stepped on the accelerator on network rollout. And that, when you mentioned in your opening remarks about the rooms that we'd added in that time, most of it came in the last 6 or 7 years as we got back to a strong upturn in the cycle, and the market was there and the demand was there for us to roll out more rooms and create a great return. So yeah, it was. I mean, it wasn't the first time I'd been through a downturn, but it was certainly deep cutting. And one of the things that I've maintained, stood us in good stead then, as well as over the last 3 months, had been the freehold base and the low risk we'd taken to ownership of real estate, keeping ownership of real estate and keeping rent off the P&L. And that did mean that we were able to weather the storm then, as we have been doing over the last few months too.
Yeah. And I was just interested, coming back to sort of when you first sort of joined Whitbread and you were finding yourself having to go around the various different executive sort of committees. Yeah. And I was also, from our previous discussions, a sort of similar theme, with your time at when you were sort of changing roles at Sainsbury's, and we discussed this, is that you weren't a natural, you weren't a corporate real estate person, if you know what I mean. You weren't a trained trained surveyor, and teams were finding all of a sudden sort of finding this guy who had nothing necessarily to do with our core skill set or sort of business unit interest involved on a day-to-day basis. So you were sort of an outsider. How has that had a sort of well, I'm assuming by virtue of the fact where you are today, it's probably had has been a benefit. But I'd be interested to understand from you, in terms of your experiences at the time, whether that was sort of felt as a strength or a weakness, or what opportunities it perhaps offered.
Yeah, I think it's been a conundrum for me all the time, James. I didn't come through the CRE route. A lot of my colleagues, a lot of the people that work for me, have been development surveyors, asset management surveyors. That wasn't my background. What I have done is made sure that where I felt that my areas are weaker, I've employed the best person that I'm allowed to, that I can afford under our sort of corporate approach, to do those roles and to help to educate me and to help to run those for the business. And, I have a wide remit now. I have an M&A director. I've done bits of M&A as part of a team, but I never led M&A. I've got a terrific M&A director now across Europe. I've got managing directors that report to me who are the best people I've come across at running budget hotel companies in their jurisdiction. And I applied that then. I didn't have the core expertise, but I was able to deal with business. And I think there's a lot that's common in terms of investment cycles, returns, refurbishment strategies, customer facing strategies, how we manage and develop teams and make them fit, how we work effectively with external partners as well, and our contractor base, our supplier base, and how we grow and how we set rates of growth according to the performance of the business and what's working and what isn't. So a lot of, I think, the disciplines of running businesses, and I don't run the biggest part of our business, but I do have some distinct accountabilities. A lot of those are disciplines that you can apply to any business. And I think you can bring in expertise to supplement those generic skills when you need it. And that's kind of how I've worked. And I talk to a lot of people like that. I think it's really good that people do have a fundamental discipline in whatever they do and they're expert in what they do. But I think it's equally okay to try lots of things, to get lots of broad generic skills that you can apply to general business. And one of the reasons I did my MBA years ago was I did feel like I needed to brush up on the generic side of skills, developing strategy, developing customer facing ideas, corporate financing, and those sit across business. They're not functional expertise. So I think that's a reasonable combination. It's worked for me. Other people take a different path, clearly.
So I suppose although it's not part of it, we can't necessarily ignore the current pandemic. So there were sort of two questions in one I would like to sort of ask. And the first one is that how have you and your teams, and you've mentioned that you've got a team of almost over 200 involved across the business that you're working, obviously, that you're leading. How have you had to adapt over the last sort of couple of months within the organizations, and what lessons and what lessons or silver linings do you think there are that people can perhaps look forward to in 2021, 18 months to 2 years away?
We have had to adapt extensively. Pre-lockdown, I would be overseas every week. I'd do a day in London or Dunstable on a Monday, and then be at Heathrow on Tuesday morning to go somewhere. And that was my routine every week. And then Thursday or Friday, we'd gather in a boardroom or a meeting room in one of our offices for exco type meetings, planning meetings, performance meetings at a senior level to bring back kind of how's everything going. We're still doing a lot of those routines, but we've obviously, like everybody else, we've learned to do it remotely. So I've sat at home pretty much now for 8-10 weeks, whatever it is. We have a routine every single morning at 8 o'clock. We have an exco meeting for 90 minutes. And then I go into my cycle of daily meetings. So I've just had a Germany executive call to go through the Germany business plan. Earlier on, I had 2 hours with the exco this morning on some of the things we're looking at performance-wise. I had a Middle East board meeting on Monday that normally would have been a flight to Dubai on Sunday night. We did it in 3 hours over iPads and everything on Monday with our joint venture partners, Emirates. So we have adapted. I think, in terms of silver linings, I think we've become far more efficient. We've got 28,000 people on furlough at the moment because we're not running hotels, we're not running pubs. They're all still closed in line with government restrictions. There are less of us running the business, but we are running it still, and we're running it really efficiently. We're not having as many unnecessary meetings. We're communicating far more frequently now that I'm not on a flight half the time. And I've got regular catch-ups with all of the teams that work in my areas during the week. And we're keeping up to date far better than we have done before. We're doing big webinars with our teams internally. And I think we're communicating better. I think we're more efficient, and I think we're making decisions far clearer, far quicker, and then revisiting them fast to see, has that worked? Do we need to change? So I think there's a lot to take from this, James. And, you know, for me personally, the lack of travel has been brilliant. You know, I've come down one flight of steps at 7 o'clock in the morning instead of 5:30 a.m. I'm not flying, and I'm home at night, which I think is okay for Sarah and the children. But, you know, maybe we bring her in at some point and she can probably tell you otherwise. But that's been a nice routine, and it's shown me that you don't have to physically always be face to face to have the conversation. You know, people can be trusted and left and more accountable for what goes on in their area, and you just keep in touch a bit more casually. You know, leave them to it.
Well, I think there. I mean, what we've been hearing, certainly within my business and across CoreNet, is much of the same. So we don't necessarily know what. I don't think anyone's yet got the answers, but I know there are lots of sessions that we're working on where we're trying to explore some of those. And finally, I kind of guess, seeing as that you get an additional, hour and a half in the morning, Mark, and one assumes that you get back from work a little bit earlier. You know, when you do turn the iPad off, and what are the sort of things that you enjoy doing that distract you from from the executive meetings and the team meetings in various different countries?
It's all very boring, I'm afraid, James. I mean, I am married with 2 children. They're both homeschooling at the moment. They're both just teenagers, my youngest, Henry. So I'm spending a lot more time with them, which is brilliant. I mean, usually I'm a touchline father, whether it's April's hockey at Reading or Henry's football or rugby at the weekends. But I don't get to see much of them during the week, and I don't get to see them do any of their school activities during the week. So it's been lovely to spend a lot more time with Sarah and the kids. I mean, we're doing a little bit of keeping fit, probably not enough. And I'm playing a bit more golf. So handicap's not coming down, but I'm playing a bit more golf, and maybe one day. So yeah, just generally, I feel like I've got a bit more balance. I mean, I always say I don't really believe in work-life balance, because I think in a big business like mine, you're kind of always working. You're just at different levels of work. And it is one of those jobs that just takes you away a lot, and you have to live with that for a number of years. But it does feel like I have discovered a better balance of getting my work to fit in with my family life rather than the other way around all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's allowed us this opportunity to speak, Mark, and for you to spare us half an hour for some feedback and for discussion. I can't thank you enough for sparing the time. I've certainly, when we've been planning and preparing this, I've known and appreciated how busy you are. I hope this is the first of a number of opportunities we have to involve you and Whitbread, more within CoreNet. We're an organisation that's really hungry for content and experience and diverse perspectives as well. So thank you very much indeed for your time and input today. It's been absolutely fascinating, and I've really enjoyed it. And that actually, from a CoreNet sort of point of view, brings us to a close. As we said before at the very start, please tune in next week for the CoreNet Essential Guide to Corporate Real Estate. It should be led by John Gilliard, and we'll look forward to seeing you very soon. Many thanks indeed. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.